I've talked in the past a little bit about this, about my anime adventures and getting into the whole genre on its own. And so I compiled a list of every anime I've watched to date. And honestly, it was a lot longer than I thought it was, I'm going to be real. It's not too long, and I've also decided to rank them because why just talk about it when we can put it into a rank and talk about it in the comments section? Because I know a couple of these are going to be shockers to some of the more experienced anime watchers, but hopefully you get my side of the story. I'll listen into your side of the story, and we'll all be friends in the end. So without further ado, let's talk about it. In no particular order, we've got Death Note, Pokemon Indigo League, Pokemon the first movie, Pokemon Heroes, and Pokemon Legends of Zoroark, Mach and Key, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, Dragon Ball, Attack on Titan Season 1, which if you haven't seen that video, it's already out. Go check it out. Fairy Tail episodes 1 through 130-ish. We'll talk about that when we get to the rankings. My Hero Academia Seasons 1 through 4, Persona 5 the animation, Spy X Family Code White, Seven Mortal Sins, Danganronpa the animation, the Season 1 version, Beyblade Metal Fusion, Ruby Season 1, and finally, Some Detective Conan. And you're probably wondering, what do you mean by Some Detective Conan? I mean, I've seen probably like 15 episodes and I think one of the movies. Alright, my ranking though. At number 15, I've got Detective Conan. Like I said, I haven't seen a lot. I do like what I see. I like that there's an English dub to it for the first couple of seasons. It's enough to where I would watch the subtitle version. And with the movie that I did watch the subtitle version. But overall, solid little show. It's more of a serial show these days. Like, they're not trying especially hard to end it. It's kind of like One Piece, where we get a piece of the story all the time. I'm talking about One Piece like I've seen it. I have not seen One Piece, but that's the vibes I'm getting. I've got a buddy that's watched it. Anyway, number 14 is Ruby. Ruby is really solid, but I feel like, and I've heard this from other people, the soundtrack is so much better than the show. Pause for effect right there. The soundtrack is so much better than the show. Every time I listen to the soundtrack, I want to watch all of the show. However, when I start watching the show, it makes me want to go listen to the soundtrack because the soundtrack was infinitely better. But the animation style's a little different. The story's pretty good. It's not... I haven't gotten too far into it. Like I said, I've only seen season 1, so all I've really got is establishing information to go off of. I do have plans to watch the show. I've watched about 3 or 4 episodes into season 2, so we will see how it goes. Number 13, The Seven Mortal Sins, which is a lot like, I'd assume, the 7 Deadly Sins. It's literally the 7 Deadly Sins, but renamed the 7 Mortal Sins. You've got pride, envy, jealousy, all of that jazz. And I'm going to be real, this is a little more fan fair, you know. There's some things on here that has a good story behind it, but also, like, what got me in the door was, you know what I mean? I'm a simple guy, I'm just trying to make my way in the universe. Or I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe. Anyway, number 12 is Fairy Tail. I was very into Fairy Tail when I first found it. We've got Natsu and Happy and Lucy. Those are basically the 3 characters I fully remember. I do remember the faces of other characters. It's been a couple years now. But the story was solid. It's just, I was binge watching anime at the time, and once I hit around 130, right after that final, like, I got a little bit into the second arc, but not a ton. I got to the end of the first arc, and I loved it, actually. But because I was binging it, I burnt out around episode 130. Number 11 was one of the first animes I watched when trying to get into anime, and that was Danganronpa. Danganronpa is basically a thriller mystery. You have to solve the puzzle of who killed this person in time, or else everybody can die if you are wrong. Like, it's a class of about, I believe, 15-ish students, and there's just one psychotic bear going at it with his little saw impersonation. Number 10, Mock and Key. I've got such a big problem with this show. I've got such a big problem with this show. My problem with the show is it's a lot of fan service. However, they gave it such a good and interesting story underneath the fan service. Season 1 was amazing. You got a little bit of the fan service, and you got a lot of build up to this incredible story. Unfortunately, and where this falls completely down my rankings, and it will be the thing that costs this series to move further and further down my rankings as time goes on and I watch more of the other shows. They leaned completely into fan service for season 2, and it irritated me on beyond anything. In my head, this is going to be a hot take, and if you're an anime lover, you're going to be like, what? I really think Mock and Key could have been like an adult My Hero Academia if it had stayed on its trajectory of season 1. It just completely gave up, though. It was really unfortunate because it was really, really good. But I digress. I could talk about that point all day. I have talked about that point for several hours with several of my friends. Next up is My Hero Academia. I was huge into this show, especially back in 2020. This was the first anime that really, really got me into watching like long term. I don't like going back to shows. I like to watch all of a show all at once. So I'm not great with going back. I've only seen like 3 episodes of House of the Dragon at this point because of that fact, but it's a very good show. But with My Hero, it is the same concept of such a fantastic anime that I just have not gotten back to. I've tried to start it over at least twice, and then I get around to season 2 and I'm like, I remember all this stuff, and then I just don't keep watching for some reason. Really feel like I could just, skip ahead to season 4 where I left off. But there's so much small stuff that I want to remember. And that is the only reason it is this far down the list. I think if I could finish the show, whenever the show finishes, that's probably when I will give it the most amount of my effort. That is when it will move up, probably into the top. Man, I was going to say top 5, but that top 5 to me is pretty solid. Number 8, though, is Beyblade Metal Fusion. Without a doubt, in my head, I can say that this was so much better than Bakugan. The show, the game Bakugan, was so good, but the show of Beyblade Metal Fusion was top tier anime. Bakugan really just had a lot of filler in its episodes, and Beyblade towed that line so perfectly that there's not even a comparison in the shows. Now, if you've got time to watch like 140 episodes of Bakugan, then more power to you. But I don't constantly have that time, especially when all of my friends, I'm sure you feel this way too if you're getting into anime, or even if you're into anime, all of your friends are giving you recommendations. One's over here, one's over here, one's all the way up there, one's on the ground somehow. Number 7, Pokemon. Pokemon seems like the perfect anime to be at number 7. If I counted all of the movies and everything, it would still be around number 7 for me. I love, love, love the Pokemon movies. I loved Indigo League. I've not seen much past that. I've seen some of White and Black's Galactic or Galar region, I think is what it's called, or something like that. But mainly just Indigo League is what I've seen all the way through. And very solid. It made me fall in love with Pokemon. It made me play some of the games. The movies are so sad. Like, why do you mess with my heartstrings like that? In Heroes, Latias and Latios. In Zoroark, Zorua and Zoroark. In the first movie, Ash is deceased in the first movie, and the power of Pokemon and love bring him back. It makes for such a good show, but it's like, dang, these are so freaking sad, man. Why? Number 6 is something a little different. Something that you've been waiting for. Death Note. And I know, number 6, a little low, huh? A little low? Yeah, it's a little low. But I could not justify moving it into my top 5 at this point. I've seen it all. I enjoyed it. Now maybe it's more recency bias for the top 5, because Death Note is a very, very, very good anime. And I believe it is the first anime I ever watched completely through, all the way. I watched it on Netflix in a hotel. I was like traveling for some reason. And it was amazing. The story, the characters, the Shimigami, I believe I always get it mixed up with Shin Megami, Tensei. But Death Note's a solid number 6. And if you want to argue it in your top 3, your top 5, that is completely valid. Same with any of these other shows. Keep me up to date of where you rank some of the animes you've seen. Because at the end of the day, this is my ranking. There's no way you have the exact same ranking. And if you do, I think we're soulmates. Number 5, and this is exactly where that doesn't happen, Persona 5 the animation. If you've not played the Persona 5 game, this show makes very little sense. Seeing as I've played the game several times, I believe like 5 or 6, maybe 7 times completely through now. That's including Royale, to be fair, but I love the show because it's something I can throw on in the background, know exactly what's happening. I can listen to the music. I love the game clearly so much. That's a long game to be playing that many times. Persona 5 just absolutely stole into my heart as the game. It is one of my top 2 games of all time, if not my favorite game of all time. And the animation comes solidly in 5th place purely basically because of that. Because it's just the game put all in order. Number 4, and one of the more recent ones I've watched all the way through, is Spy X Family. Spy X Family. Spy X Family, that's another one that pulled on my heartstrings. A little different though. I love the idea of having a spy, a super assassin, and a telepath all in the same house, all going for something different, all pretending to be a certain person for a various amount of reasons, and all while trying to get the overall goal, which is getting it into Second Son's inner circle. Overall, I think Anya is just an adorable character, and it's hard not to fall in love with the character. When I went to see the movie, because that is why I watched the show, I was just like, the show is not that long, the movie's coming out. When I saw the movie, it was just almost more of the same, but the same is exactly what I wanted more of. So that is why I fell in love with Spy X Family Code White. Number 3, and what I recently watched, is Attack on Titans to this point, it's just season 1, but it has narrowly beaten out Spy X Family. Now it can go up or down based on Spy X Family's next season and Attack on Titan season 2. But it is an amazing show, and I did a whole 30-minute video of it, which I will have at the end of this video a link to it, or maybe in the description, but it is a fantastic anime. I did not expect to like it. My friend recommended it to me, and I was just like, it doesn't really seem like it's for me. I started it, got 30 seconds in, only saw the scouts, and I was just like, yeah, this is kind of goofy, this is kind of silly, like, this is my thing. But I gave it a shot. And I do not regret it in the slightest. The next two are going to be debated. There's no way they won't be. Number 2, Dragon Ball. I've not seen any other Dragon Ball except Dragon Ball the original series, and that is firmly number 2 right now. I absolutely love young Goku and the story of Goku and his training in the Hermit Temple and everything. Master Roshi's a guy, you know. It's basically like we're meeting all these characters from Dragon Ball Z, like all the core characters, and learning how the gang got together. Almost like a Scooby-Doo prequel in a way. In a weird way. That was a crazy grab. But meeting the dragon, you know, like this is 150 episodes just blew by for me. And that is saying something because, like I said, with Fairy Tail, I burnt out after 130 episodes. So the fact that Dragon Ball, now towards the end, it did start to drag a little. The World Championship, there had been like 4 of them. And then the last World Championship was like, I think there were like 4 episodes where Goku was fighting Piccolo Jr. alone, just the championship. And those did get a little long. I really, really like the story of Dragon Ball. The fights are good. I'm not huge into fighting anime per se, which is why I'm reluctant to get into Dragon Ball Z, but I will get into it for sure. Even if it's just on the merit of Dragon Ball alone. But I do have friends that are just like, you haven't seen Dragon Ball Z? Like, how? It's like, buddy, I haven't had time. Or more in the case of, I've been watching other things, to be fair. Number 1, the longest, this was one of the first, but definitely one of the longer ones that I finished in my early days of trying so hard to get into anime. This was recommended to me by a friend years ago. I think they were on like season 2 when he recommended it to me. And we're to the point where season 6 has been out for like a year, 2 years with... Before I say with who, let me say what it's called. At number 1, just pulling on your heartstrings this time, we've got JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. Oh no, why? Scotty, no. Scotty, yes. And I will tell you why. It is because I love it's almost like the story and the short fights that I want out of Dragon Ball. They focus a lot on story, and then have some fights, focus on story, have some fights, and then the main protagonist is always changing, but it always has some link. I mean, the Speedwagon Foundation? Come on. But by far, and I'm gonna mess this up so hard, but I believe, Season 5, Jotaro was my favorite. Not Jotaro Kujo, like whatever Season 5, I believe it was. No, I think Jotaro. Let me just give that a quick Google right here as we speak. Jojo. So we've got, okay, yes, Jotaro Kujo. It's exactly who I thought it was. Now, don't get me wrong. Jonathan Joestar was one of my absolute favorites, especially at first when he was the first one. Like, but he had such an interesting arc. Jonathan was amazing. A perfect start, honestly. And Dio, traveling from that season 1 all the way through the show, we've got Giorno, Josuke, Jotaro, Jonathan, Polnareff. That guy, we love that. We love Polnareff. And then finally, we've got Jolene Cujo. And Jolene was actually a super solid addition to the JoJo's franchise. I did not expect to like Jolene as much as I did. Honestly, I think Jolene might be my second favorite, and third would probably be Josuke. I mean, clearly, I watched it 2 or 3 years ago, so my memory's fully there with the exact character names, but everything's all up here. And that is why JoJo's is by far my favorite. Well, by far is a bit of a leap, isn't it? Because Dragon Ball was very, very solid. So recapping, at number 1 we've got JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. At number 2 we've got Dragon Ball. Number 3 we've got Attack on Titans Season 1. 4 Spy X Family. 5 Persona 5 the Animation. 6 Death Note. 7 Pokemon. 8 Beyblade Metal Fusion. 9 My Hero Academia. 10 Makin Key. 11 Danganronpa. 12 Fairy Tail. 13 Seven Mortal Sins. 14 Ruby. And 15 Detective Conan. And once again, Detective Conan is super solid. There's no reason for it to be at 15 other than the fact that I just have not seen a lot of it. It is the perfect background anime. You're not going to lose a bunch of story notes if you miss an episode because you're working on something. But that is my ranking for my 15 animes that I've watched. If I had to recommend 3 specifically for you to get into, I would say, depending on what you enjoy, Pokemon is the easiest to get into, especially the movies. Dragon Ball will lead you down a world, just a freaking world, that you can continue down or you cannot continue down. 3rd, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. 4th, My Hero. And 5th, if I haven't said Spy X Family, then definitely Spy X Family. Honestly, I'd have Spy X Family higher on the list. I've talked about the animes now. I would recommend any one of these 15. They're all a little different. They're all for a little different audience. But if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button because it helps more than you understand and more than I even understand, because I don't understand it at all. We are against the algorithm, but we're with the algorithm, you know. But I want to thank you so much for being here and watching, and I will see you in the next video.